welcome to our deep dive into Web3. I bet you've probably seen it everywhere online recently.
Yeah, it's all over the place.
And maybe even felt a little confused, like, what is this thing?
It can be overwhelming. There's a lot of jargon and hype.
Right. So today, we're breaking it all down.
We'll look at what Web3 even means, how it's different from what we're used to.
Like, how's it different from just, using the internet now?
Exactly. And we'll also see how it connects to cryptocurrency.
Because they always seem to be mentioned together, right?
Oh, yeah, they're definitely linked.
So, okay, let's start with the basics.
Sounds good.
You're familiar with how the internet works today, right? Like, we visit websites.
Yeah, social media, all that.
And it's all on these huge servers owned by big companies,
Like Google, Facebook, Amazon, the usual suspects.
Exactly. And all this power in just a few companies, well, that's what Web3 wants to change.
Right, that's the big idea, decentralization.
Decentralization.
So instead of those big companies controlling everything, Web3 uses blockchain.
Blockchain. So that's where it gets a little...
Complicated.
Yeah, a little bit. Can you explain it a bit more? Like, what's the big deal with blockchain?
Sure. Imagine if you didn't have to rely on Facebook for your data,
Like, they wouldn't have all our info.
Exactly. Instead, your information is kept safe and checked by tons of computers.
Like, all working together.
Yep, a whole network all making sure the blockchain is accurate.
So it's not just one company in charge. More like everyone's checking on each other.
Precisely. And that makes it way harder to mess with the information.
So that's decentralization, right? Lots of power spread out instead of just in one place.
You got it. And that's at the heart of what makes Web3 so different, maybe even revolutionary.
It sounds like it could really change things, but how does it actually work, like, practically?
Well, one major difference is data ownership. Think about it. Right now, when you use Facebook or Google,
We're kind of giving them our information?
you got it. You're trading data for their services. But in Web3, you'd actually own your data.
Like, it would really be ours.
Yep, you decide who sees it, and you could even make money from it.
Wow, so we wouldn't be the product anymore. Our data would be an asset.
Exactly. It flips the whole thing around.
That's pretty cool. But what about all this talk about cryptocurrency and NFTs?
Yeah, cryptocurrency is a huge part of Web3, although...
More than just, like, Bitcoin.
Right, it's not just about buying stuff. It's also used to build these decentralized apps and platforms.
So when people say Web3 is built on blockchain, they mean the same tech as Bitcoin.
You got it. Blockchain makes a lot of this stuff possible, and then you've got these things called tokens.
Tokens.
Yeah, think of them like digital representations of things. They could be assets, access to stuff, all sorts.
I'm not sure I get it.
Okay, imagine a social media platform, but it's decentralized. You could earn tokens for posting content
Or getting likes and stuff.
Yeah, and you could use those tokens to get special features or even vote on how the platforms run.
So instead of the platform making money from ads, it's the users who have the power.
Exactly, and that's just one example.
Okay, I'm starting to see the picture here.
It all connects. Blockchain is the base, then there's cryptocurrency.
And these tokens on top of it all?
Yep, and they're all working together within these new types of apps.
Apps that aren't controlled by a single company.
Exactly.
Wow, this is a lot, but it's definitely fascinating. It really feels like a completely different way to use the internet.
It is. It's a whole new paradigm.
And it sounds pretty great, but are there any downsides, like things to be worried about?
Oh, absolutely. Web3 is still really new, and there are definitely challenges to consider, like scalability, for instance.
Scalability, what's that?
Well, blockchain is secure, but it can be slow and kind of expensive, especially with lots of users.
So if everyone starts using these decentralized apps, it could get bogged down.
Yeah, that's a real concern.
That makes sense. What about, like, just using Web3? It seems kind of complicated.
You're right. Accessibility is another big hurdle. It's got to be easier to use, more user-friendly.
Yeah, because if it's too hard, people won't bother switching.
Right. Even if Web3 is better in some ways, if it's a pain to use, people will stick with what they know.
That's true. Are there other concerns people have?
Well, security is another big one. The blockchain itself is super secure, but
what?
there are other weak points. Like if you lose your crypto wallet key, you're in trouble.
Oh, no. Like, all your money's gone.
It can be a real nightmare. Education is key here. People need to learn how to stay safe with this stuff.
That's definitely important. Anything else?
Yeah, some people worry about the environmental impact.
Like it uses too much energy.
Right. Some older blockchains, like Bitcoin, use a lot of power, but newer ones are being designed to be more efficient.
So it sounds like there are good things and bad things about Web3.
That's a fair assessment. It's got a lot of potential, but we got to be realistic about the challenges, too.
Yeah, for sure. So maybe let's focus on the good stuff for a minute. What are the strongest arguments for Web3?
Well, we talked about owning your data, right? That's huge.
Like not being tracked and used by big companies all the time.
Exactly. And with that comes more privacy and security.
So maybe Web3 could actually make the internet safer.
That's the hope.
What about for, like, businesses and new ideas? Does Web3 change anything there?
Oh, yeah, big time. It could level the playing field.
How so?
Think about it. No gatekeepers controlling platforms. Anyone with a good idea can just jump in.
So it's like anyone can start something new without needing permission.
Exactly. More opportunities for everyone.
That's awesome. And I've also heard Web3 could be good for people who don't have access to banks.
You're right. It's called decentralized finance, or DeFi, and it has a lot of potential there.
Okay, tell me more about that.
Imagine someone who lives somewhere without banks. With DeFi, they could get loans and stuff just using their phone.
So they wouldn't need a bank account.
Nope, they could use these platforms directly. It's pretty amazing.
Wow, it sounds like Web3 could really help people who are excluded from the regular system.
Absolutely. It could offer them better options and more control over their money.
That's incredible, but we got to be real. It's not like Web3 is going to magically fix everything,
Right,
right?
of course not. It's a tool. It's up to us to use it wisely and for good.
Yeah, that makes sense. So where do we go from here? Like, what needs to happen for Web3 to really take off?
Well, we talked about scalability and ease of use. Those are big ones. Developers are working on making blockchain better and more user-friendly.
And we need to educate people, right? Like, help them understand how to use Web3 safely.
Absolutely. But it goes beyond just the tech itself.
Like what?
We need to talk about ethics, about the impact on society. We don't want to create new problems.
That's a good point. Like, how do we make sure Web3 is fair and benefits everyone?
Exactly. It's about building a future that's better for all of us, not just a select few.
It feels like we're at the start of something really big, but I keep hearing about this metaverse thing too.
Ah, yes, the metaverse. That's a whole other layer of this Web3 revolution.
Can you explain how those two are connected? Like, what even is the metaverse?
Think of it like a bunch of virtual worlds all linked together, almost like stepping into a video game, but with real consequences.
Consequences.
Well, in the metaverse, you could own things like virtual land or digital art. And because of blockchain, that ownership is secure.
So it's like real ownership, but in a digital space.
Exactly. It blurs the lines between the physical and digital worlds in a big way.
That's kind of wild. So what could we actually do in the metaverse?
Oh, all sorts of things. Attend concerts, go to conferences, even just hang out with friends, all in these immersive digital environments.
And since it's built on Web3, these metaverse platforms could be decentralized too, right? So not controlled by one company.
That's the idea. Users could have more control over their experiences and their data.
It all sounds so futuristic, but is it really realistic to think we'll all be spending time in these virtual worlds?
It's hard to say for sure, but look how much of our lives are already online. As technology gets better and the metaverse becomes more immersive, I think it's definitely possible.
It makes you think about the future of, well, everything, like work, how we socialize, even our own identities.
Absolutely. It raises so many questions about how we'll live, learn, and connect in these new spaces.
It's mind-blowing. It feels like Web3 and the metaverse are making us rethink what it means to be online, maybe even what it means to be human.
It's definitely a paradigm shift, and like with any new technology, there are risks along with the opportunities.
So we need to be careful and think critically about how we develop and use these technologies.
Absolutely. We need to ensure they're used to benefit everyone, not just a select few.
This deep dive has been a whirlwind. We've covered so much: decentralization, data ownership, crypto, NFTs, even touched on the metaverse and how it might change everything.
It's a lot to take in, but hopefully you've got a better understanding of Web3 now, the good and the bad.
I know, I've learned a ton. And it's left me feeling excited, but also a bit overwhelmed by all the possibilities.
That's understandable. It's still early days for Web3, but the choices we make now will shape its future.
So we all have a role to play in building this new internet.
Exactly. It's an invitation to imagine and create a different kind of digital world, one that's more open, fair, and gives more power to the people.
And on that note, we'll leave you with this question. As we enter this new era of the internet, what role will you play in shaping the future of Web3?
Yeah, consequences. Like imagine buying virtual land in the metaverse.
Okay.
Well, with blockchain, that ownership is secure. You really own that piece of digital space.
Huh. It's like owning property, but it's all online.
Exactly. And that's just one example. It really changes how we think about the digital world.
Yeah, it's not just like playing a game anymore.
Right. It's got real implications, especially when you bring in things like NFTs.
NFTs, those are,
non-fungible tokens.
right, non-fungible tokens. So how do those fit into the metaverse?
Well, NFTs are perfect for representing unique digital items, like a piece of virtual art or even that virtual land we talked about.
So it's like proof of ownership, but for something that only exists online.
Exactly. It's all about verifying that you own something, even if it's digital.
It's pretty crazy to think about.
It is. It's like the lines between the real world and the online world are blurring.
Yeah, it's like we're heading towards this more immersive internet experience.
That's a great way to put it. We're becoming more integrated with technology, and the metaverse is a big part of that.
It's a lot to wrap your head around. So what can we actually do in the metaverse? Like, what's the point?
Oh, the possibilities are endless. Think about it. Virtual concerts?
Oh, like seeing your favorite band perform live, but you're actually at home.
Exactly. Or how about attending a global conference without ever leaving your house?
That would save a lot on travel costs.
For sure. And then there's education. Imagine learning by actually doing things in a virtual environment.
That's way more engaging than just reading a textbook.
Right. And even just socializing, meeting up with friends in these cool digital
It's
spaces.
like a whole new way to hang out.
It is. And remember, if these metaverse platforms are built on Web3, they could be decentralized.
Right, so not controlled by one company, like we talked about earlier.
Exactly. Users could have more say in how these virtual worlds are run.
That's pretty awesome. But it all sounds so futuristic, like something out of a movie.
It does, doesn't it? But think about it. We're already spending so much time online.
That's true, like social media, streaming, all that.
Exactly. So as technology gets even better and the metaverse becomes more realistic and engaging, I think it's totally possible that we'll spend even more time in these virtual spaces.
That's a really interesting thought. But it raises a lot of questions too. Like what will it mean for our jobs, for how we connect with each other?
You're right. It challenges us to rethink a lot of things about how we live and work.
Like what will work even look like in the metaverse? Will we all have virtual offices?
Maybe. Or maybe we'll collaborate in these amazing digital spaces that we can't even imagine yet.
And how about our relationships? Will we still value real-world connections if we can hang out with anyone, anywhere, virtually?
That's a big question. It definitely makes you think about the nature of connection and community.
And what about our sense of self? Will we create these digital avatars that are like idealized versions of ourselves?
It's possible. It's almost like we're expanding our identities into the digital realm.
Wow, it's a lot to process.
It is. Web3 and the metaverse, they're pushing us to rethink our relationship with technology and honestly with reality itself.
It's like a whole new way of seeing the world.
Exactly. It's a paradigm shift, no doubt about it. And like with any major change, there will be challenges and risks we need to be aware of.
Like what?
Well, we need to make sure these technologies are developed ethically, that they're used for good.
Yeah, we don't want to just create new problems.
Exactly. We need to be careful about how we govern the metaverse, how we ensure it benefits everyone.
So it's not just about the technology itself, it's about how we use it.
Absolutely. It's about making conscious choices that shape the future we want to create.
Well, this deep dive has been a wild ride. We've talked about so much from decentralization and blockchain to NFTs and the metaverse.
It's been a journey, and hopefully you've gained a better understanding of Web3 and all its potential, both good and bad.
I know I have. It's definitely a lot to think about. And it's made me realize that Web3 isn't just some abstract concept.
It's something that's being built right now, and the choices we make today will have a huge impact on its future.
So we all have a responsibility to be informed and to engage in these conversations.
Exactly. It's not just about being passive observers. We can all contribute to shaping this new digital world.
And on that note, we'll leave you with this final thought. As we enter this new era of the internet, what role will you play in building the future of Web3?
Yeah, and NFTs, they're perfect for that, for representing unique digital things.
Oh, I see. So like, even if it's virtual, it's still like one of a kind.
Exactly. It's about proving that you own something specific, something nobody else can claim.
That makes sense. It's like digital scarcity, right? Which is kind of weird to think about.
It is. It goes against what we're used to with digital stuff, where you can copy anything easily.
Yeah, but I guess in the metaverse, that scarcity is what gives things value.
Right, and it's all thanks to blockchain. That's what makes this kind of ownership possible.
It's fascinating how all these pieces fit together, from like the technical stuff to the economic side of things.
It is. It's a whole new system, a whole new way of thinking about value and ownership.
So, okay, we've talked about owning things in the metaverse, but what about actually doing stuff? Like, what's the appeal?
Well, imagine attending a concert, your favorite band.
But you're not really there, it's all virtual.
Exactly, but it could feel real, like super immersive.
And I guess you would have to deal with crowds or bad seats.
Right. Or what about conferences, instead of flying across the world?
You could just log it from home.
Exactly. Save time, save money, and it's better for the environment, too.
That's a good point. And you mentioned education, like how could the metaverse change learning?
Oh, there's so much potential there. Imagine learning about history by actually visiting ancient Rome virtually.
Or doing a science experiment in a virtual lab.
Exactly. It's way more engaging than just reading about it in a book.
It's like learning by doing, but in a whole new way.
Right. And then there's just the social aspect, hanging out with friends in these cool digital spaces.
Like a virtual coffee shop or something.
Yeah. Or imagine going to a virtual museum together, or exploring a fantastical world.
It's like taking video games to a whole new level.
It is, and remember, if these metaverse platforms are built on Web3 principles, they could be decentralized.
Right, so not controlled by any one company.
Exactly. Users could have more say, more ownership over their experiences.
It's pretty amazing to think about. But is it really realistic to think we'll all be living in these virtual worlds someday?
Well, that's the big question, isn't it? It's hard to predict the future,
But
but
what?
well, look at how much our lives have already moved online. We shop, we work, we socialize all through the internet.
That's true. It wasn't that long ago that none of that stuff was possible.
Exactly. So as technology advances and these virtual worlds become more and more realistic and engaging, I think it's definitely possible that we'll spend a lot more time in them.
It's kind of mind-blowing to think about, like, what will that mean for how we live our lives? Will we still value real-world experiences?
It's a big question, and it's one we need to start thinking about seriously.
Yeah, because this isn't just some sci-fi fantasy anymore. It's starting to feel like a real possibility.
It is, and it raises so many fascinating questions, not just about technology, but about what it means to be human.
Like, what will work look like in the metaverse? Will we all have virtual offices?
Maybe. Or maybe the whole concept of work will change. Maybe we'll have more freedom and flexibility.
And what about relationships? Will we still prioritize face-to-face interactions when we can connect with anyone, anywhere, virtually?
That's a big one. It makes you wonder about the nature of intimacy and connection.
And our sense of self, like, will our digital avatars become an extension of ourselves, or even replace our real-world identities?
It's a fascinating question. It's almost like we're expanding the boundaries of what it means to be a person.
This is all so complex. It feels like Web3 and the metaverse, they're not just about technology, they're about, like, the future of humanity.
I agree. It's a paradigm shift, and it challenges us to rethink so many things about how we live, how we connect, what it means to be alive in the 21st century.
It's a lot to process. This deep dive has been a wild ride. We've covered so much ground, from decentralization and blockchain to NFTs and the metaverse, and it feels like we've only scratched the surface.
It's true, there's so much more to explore, but hopefully you've gained a better understanding of Web3 and all its potential, the good and the bad.
I know I have. It's definitely left me with more questions than answers, but I'm also feeling really excited about the possibilities.
And that's the key, isn't it? To stay curious, to keep exploring, to be a part of shaping this new world that's emerging.
Because it's not something that's happening to us, it's something we're all creating together.
Exactly. And the choices we make now will determine what that future looks like.
So if we wrap up this deep dive, we leave you with this final thought. What role will you play in building the future of Web3, AATI?